Hey guys, welcome to the long lost Bobby Hesley show. How you guys doing this morning? I think I know how you're doing. It's been a while since I have broadcasted. It's been a long time. Well, I broadcasted when Roe vs. Wade was overturned this past summer, but I thought I would hop on, and I do kind of miss you guys, and I don't know. I just felt led to hop on this morning just to I don't know, give kind of my take on everything that's happened. Now, I am sad to report that my state of Michigan has now become pretty much the abortion capital of the country. We just passed the most radical abortion legislation that I can't seem to find anywhere else. I mean, Proposal 3 passed, Proposal 1, 2, and 3 passed, all of which are horrible. It is what it is, guys. But the strange thing is I'm upset, but I'm not like devastated. And I'll tell you why. Because, and here's why you shouldn't be upset or devastated either. There's a quote from a Catholic saint that we honor in the Catholic Church. Her name is Saint Therese of Lisieux. We call her the Little Flower. And here's what her quote is. She said, "The world is thy ship, not thy home." Think about this. The world is your ship, not your home. This is not our home, guys. It's really not. Earth is not our home. It's not our ultimate destination. We are passers through. We are pilgrims. We are sojourners, and this isn't our home. I mean, we do have to be active citizens. We do have to try to build a just and civilized society. But at the end of the day, guys, this ain't our home. It's not. How would you feel? I mean, think of how insane it would be to, let's say you're staying at a hotel for the weekend. You're only going to be there for the weekend, right? And this hotel passes some kind of corporate policy into the future, and you get upset about it. Like there's a memo that they circulate throughout their staff about changes they're making at the hotel, and you get upset about it. It would be kind of strange, wouldn't it? Because you're only there for the weekend. Who cares? Right? It's not your ultimate destination. And that's kind of how we have to think about what happened last night, guys. Here's the fact. Here's the only way. I want to give you a sane perspective. This is the only way. What I'm going to cover in this video, guys, and some of what I cover might upset you guys, the way I upset you guys when I came at Kanye for his anti-Semitism. Boy, did you guys get upset with me over that. And you might get upset with me today. And I'm not trying to throw salt on your wounds or add to your upset or anything like that. But there is a perspective that you need to adopt, that you will go nuts. You will go crazy if you don't adopt it. And I'm going to give it to you. Take it for what it is. Love it. Hate it. Whatever you want to do with it. But in my opinion, it's the only way to stay sane. So here, let me start by saying this, guys. And this is not defeatist. This is not a fatalistic defeatist mindset. I'm not accepting defeat, but I'm accepting reality. And there is a difference between the two, between accepting defeat and accepting reality. And here's the reality you have to accept, guys. America has become a secularized and a paganized nation. That's a fact. If you have any doubt about that, look at some of the horrendous legislation. Look at some of the horrendous people who were either elected for the first time last night or who were reelected, like our Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Guys, there's no way that a people who is in touch with God, that a Christian nation would elect or reelect some of these demons that are in office. There's no way that a truly Christian nation would allow some of these horrific laws to stand. You just have to accept that, guys. We're in a paganized nation now. We're living in a post-Christian culture now. You know, for years, people have always been talking about this collapse that's coming on, right? Guys, we've been living in the ashes for the last decades, in my opinion. We're just realizing it now. The electorate takes time to catch up with the actual reality of the culture. We've been living amidst the ruins since the 60s, guys. I mean, let me give you an example. Let's look at Proposal 3, shall we? Let's look at Proposal 3. Let me share my screen here. Just bear with me for a second here. Yeah. It is good to see you guys, though. It really is. It is great to see some of you guys. It's been a while. Let's look at Proposal 3, shall we? Now, we'll get into Proposals 1 and 2. Now, if you guys don't live in Michigan, and Proposal 3 is still very important to you. Proposal 3 matters to you, even though you don't live in Michigan. And let me tell you why. Because the state of Michigan, that I'm ashamed to call myself a resident of now, is going to be the template for child sacrifice throughout the country. Other states are going to look at Proposal 3. Other states are going to see that Proposal 3 passed, the barbarism that's within this bill, and they're going to say, hey, we got to get it passed the way they did up in Michigan. Michigan just gave the baby slaughterers hope that they can legislate their barbarity, that they can legislate their murder. So here's what Proposal 3 is. Every individual has a fundamental right to reproductive freedom, which entails the right to make and effectuate decisions about all matters relating to pregnancy, including but not limited to prenatal care, childbirth, postpartum care, contraception, sterilization, abortion care, miscarriage management, and infertility care. This also includes gender transition surgery. This also includes lots of things that do not require parental consent. Okay? If you guys want to really get into the details of Proposal 3, just look it up online when you get some time. And you're going to see that it was built on lies. All the deception that was built into this bill, saying we need to protect Roe. Roe needs to be enshrined in Michigan and the Michigan Constitution. Roe versus Wade didn't contain anything about gender operations. Roe versus Wade didn't say that there couldn't be parental consent. Roe versus Wade was actually a lot more tame compared to Proposal 3, and yet they were able to successfully deceive everybody into voting for it. Now Michigan is going to become a state where, let's say that other surrounding states have banned abortion. Michigan is going to become a state now where abortion refugees can come. Let me give you guys an analogy. Think of the 4th of July, right? Let's say you live in a state that bans fireworks. You cannot legally purchase fireworks in the state of such and such, right? And let's say that the state right next to you allows fireworks, right? It's legal to buy and purchase and sell fireworks there. So if you were to go over to that state, what's the first thing you're going to see when you come up to the state border? What's the first billboard you're going to see when you go to that state border? And on that highway, on that interstate, every other billboard you see is buy fireworks, buy fireworks, buy fireworks, right? Because fireworks are legal in that state, whereas they're not in yours. Unfortunately, Michigan is going to become an abortion fireworks state now. Whenever you come to Michigan, the first thing you're going to see is it says Pure Michigan. And I guarantee you, now that Proposal 3 has successfully passed, there's going to be billboards that say abortions provided here, just like they say fireworks provided here. That's just the reality, guys. That's the state that we live in now. So why am I not like hardcore upset, though? As horrible as that is, why am I not hardcore upset? Because this is not my home, guys. Yes, I'm doing what I can to be pro-life. I'm doing what I can to fight abortion. I'm doing what I can to change people's minds, one heart at a time, one mind at a time, one conversation at a time, one podcast, one YouTube video at a time. And that's really all we can do, guys, is just evangelize, try to change minds and hearts. But let me tell you where I've been these last few years, guys, because if you've noticed, I haven't been around. I haven't. I mean, if you go to my if you go to my Facebook page, if you'll see, I have not been that active, guys. You guys have followed me because of how active I used to be. I mean, I was broadcasting every day. I grew a following, guys. I exploded a couple years ago, man. I grew a following of over 24,000 people between Facebook and YouTube in like 3 months. I still got 19 and some change, but I haven't been active, guys. Look at how I've just been posting here and there. I made a post about getting out and voting, but I made a few posts about Kanye, which, boy, did you guys, clash with me on that one. But why haven't I been active? Where has Bobby Hesley been? Well, ever since the 2020 elections, guys, I kind of had a realization. I had a realization that at the end of the day, man, it's really not worth it to just make your whole life about politics because you really can't control it. And I know I make a lot look easy. I make it look easy to just turn on a microphone and talk about stuff going on in the country. But if you guys saw how much prep work goes into doing that, I started realizing, you know what? I'm kind of an outrage broker. And it gets exhausting pretty quick when you're an outrage broker. When all you do is you find stuff that you're pissed off about, that you can't really do anything about. And then you podcast and you blog about things you're pissed off about that you can't do anything about, that others get ticked off about, they can't do anything about. It gets exhausting after a while. It's constant negativity. You're taking in all this information, you're doing all this research, and you're just seeing all this negativity and corruption that you really can't do anything about. And after a while, it's not very mentally healthy to be a content creator in the political space. It's really not. Yeah, you get lots of followers, you get lots of clicks, you get lots of this, you get lots of that. But it comes at the cost of your mental health. When you see the hypocrisy of the Democrats, you see the hypocrisy of the left, how they are the people who supposedly stand for tolerance are the most intolerant people on the planet. They are the most racist people on the planet. And yet, when you're exposed to that every day, and when you make it your craft to expose it to others, it just gets kind of exhausting. So what I've been doing, and I kind of prepared you guys for this, is I used to keep saying, focus on the things that you can control. So what I've been doing the last 2 years is I've just been killing it in real estate. I've been extremely focused on my real estate business. And when I look back, I am so, so glad that that's the decision I made. Yeah, I probably could have lots of followers by now. I could probably have a big platform by now. But you know what? Number one, content creators with millions of followers, number one, they don't make as much money as you think. Trust me when I tell you. I know many starving artists. Yeah, they got big followings and, they post something and they're flooded with likes immediately. Thousands of likes pour in, thousands of comments pour in, but they're broke and struggling. And their financial futures are very bleak. And a lot of the reasons they do the content that they do is to escape the reality of how bad their finances and how bad their life is. And you can't do that for too much longer. Sooner or later, the math is going to come up with you. It's going to catch up with you. If you're living above your means, sooner or later, that math is going to come back and haunt you, and it's going to take you down. And if I would have stayed on the path that I was on 2 years ago when I was really just exploding on social media, I mean, think about it. It would have been all for naught, because look at where we're at 2 years later. 2 years later, not much has changed. The electoral system is still just as corrupt as it ever was. Very little election integrity measures have been taken. I mean, what good would it have done? My life would be very, very far behind right now had I kept doing what I was doing, guys. I'm telling you. And I thank God that I listened to that still small voice. And let's be honest, when you're a content creator, it gives you dopamine hits. How cool is it when you can flick a camera on and you know that there's tens of thousands of people that are willing to listen to what you have to say? That creates a high in and of itself, right? It really does. If I'm being totally honest. But that doesn't pay the bills unless you've been doing it for like a really, really, really long time. But let me switch over into some more political analysis, which kind of contradicts everything I just said. But here's the perspective. Here's the conclusion that I have come to, guys. And this is going to sound very, coming from left field for me, because if you think about it, most of you started following me because of my support for Donald Trump 2 years ago, all the stuff I was doing for and on behalf of Trump. And it pains me to say this, guys, but I'm going to go into why. I'm going to give you good reason why. The era of Trump is over, guys. We need to move on from Donald Trump. We do. It's time for us to move on from Donald Trump. I believe that Donald Trump should be a kingmaker, not a politician. I do not think he should run again in 2024. I think he's a liability now, and I'm going to tell you why. Now, I'm not selling out. I'm not being a leftist. Just give me a chance, because I know a lot of my followers, you guys connected with me over Trump, so you got to hear me out on this. Here's the bottom line, guys, and the facts are the facts. The results are the results. But a majority of Trump-backed candidates lost. Candidates who were backed by Trump lost, man. And I hate to say it. I really hate to say it. But I see a lot of parallels between Donald Trump and Barack Obama. Barack Obama was such an unpopular stumper. Like, Barack Obama was such a liability during his 2 terms in office because of all his socialist policies, that every candidate who he endorsed, when he would show up and roll up his sleeve and say, hey, you got to vote for Nancy Pelosi. Hey, you got to vote for Harry Reid. And you got to vote for this guy. Hey, yes, we can. Yes, we can. Every person he showed up for lost. He was a liability. The Obama effect was negative on their campaigns, and they lost. They really did. We saw the same thing with Trump, guys. He's not the kingmaker we thought he was. When you combine his toxic, social media presence, when you combine, and I'm gonna be really honest about how I feel about Donald Trump, guys. I'm gonna be really honest. Amen, Lynn. It is what it is. I love Donald Trump. I really do. And I thank Donald Trump for everything he did during his 4 years in office. I truly, really do. I truly, truly, really do. Yeah, Sammy. It sucks being a starving artist, doesn't it? At the end of the day, likes and follows don't pay the bills. You got to live in the real world. And I've been living in the real world these last 2 years. But I'm going to tell you how I honestly feel about Donald Trump. I believe that the era of Trump is over, but that's not all bad news. The era of Trump is over, but the era of DeSantis has also begun. Ron DeSantis is our guy. We need to move on from Donald Trump, and we need to embrace Ron DeSantis. And I'm going to juxtapose the two. I'm going to show you how superior Ron DeSantis is from Donald Trump on every level. And again, this hurts me to say this, guys. You guys saw how hard I went for Trump. All the work I did with Black Voices for Trump here in Detroit, which I thank God for that, because I've made lifelong friends from Black Voices for Trump that I'm going to be friends with, for a long time, for the rest of my life. I thank God for that phase in my life. But we got to move on from this guy. Let me give you an example. Let's go back 2 years ago. And I have to kind of improve your guys' memory here, because we have to forget, we have to remember Biden and the Democrats are so evil. Sometimes we let that cause us to forget the hand that our party played in this nation's demise. Guys, who shut America down? Now, I was in Thailand when this happened. I was 8,000 miles overseas, and I was not here for the American lockdowns. The toilet paper runs, the lockdowns, all the 2020 riots, the summer of rage over George Floyd. I was not here for all that, guys. I was overseas. That's where my channel was actually born. because I felt helpless in Thailand. All my country was burning 2 years ago, and I was all the way across the world, and I didn't feel like I could do much. So that's when I started my channel. Miguel, a Trump and DeSantis ticket would not be good. Trump needs to step out. He needs to back out. It needs to be Ron DeSantis and Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota. And I'm going to get into that why. Why would DeSantis and Noem be the perfect ticket? Because they proved they have the successful blueprint. They were the two governors, the only two governors who didn't shut down during COVID. South Dakota stayed open and Florida stayed open, and they both were rewarded handsomely for doing that. And I'm going to get into that, Miguel. Forget about Trump, dude. Forget about Trump. Donald Trump is the one who shut down the country. Donald Trump is the one who gave all the power and all the authority to Fauci, to Birx, to all these faux fake doctors. That was Donald Trump that did all that, guys. All those things that we hate about the last 2 years were brought to you by Donald J. Trump. You hate lockdowns? Well, guess who started the lockdown on the federal level? It was Donald Trump. And then all these Democrat governors saw how compliant the population was, and they thought, you know what? We're going to keep it. Yeah, thanks, Trump. Thanks for giving us the idea of locking things down. We're going to keep lockdown what you started lockdown. He shut down the economy. He shut down the country. That was his first mistake. Do you guys hate vaccine mandates? Show me some ones in the comments for everybody who hates vaccine mandates. Let me see some ones. If you hate the job or jab vax mandates. Did you guys hate those? Did you guys despise those? Were you guys victims of those? Did you guys have to choose between your job or a jab? Huh? Well, guess who rushed out an untested vaccine? Was it Joe Biden? Did Joe Biden rush out an untested vaccine? No. Did Barack Obama? No. Did Nancy Pelosi? No. Did Gretchen Whitmer? No. Who rushed out an untested, unproven vaccine? It was Donald Trump with Operation Warp Speed. He gave us the lockdowns. He gave us the vaccines. Who was it that let the country burn during all of 2020? Who let the country burn? Who let Black Lives Matter and Antifa and all these thugs and goons and criminals burn our country to the ground? Who was in office then? Was it Biden? Was Joe Biden in office back then? Was Kamala Harris vice president back then? No, it was Donald Trump. Donald Trump let the country burn, guys, because he was too afraid of being a dictator. He started listening to the left. He started listening to his critics, and he was too afraid to come across as a dictator. And he was too afraid to fulfill all these false stereotypes that the left was trying to make out about him, that he just kind of wimped out and stepped back and just let the country burn. And I never forgot about that. Who hates inflation? Huh? Who hates all this money we've been printing that has driven the value of the dollar down, and now we're suffering with 8 to 10% inflation? Who hates inflation? I do. Who started printing money like crazy during COVID? Who started doing all these stimmy checks like crazy during COVID? It was Donald Trump. And Matt, Build Back Better was built upon all the printing and all the money that Donald Trump started doing. Inflation was already well underway with all the decisions Trump made during COVID. That's a fact. Ron DeSantis, on the other hand, let me juxtapose him to Donald Trump. Ron DeSantis refused to shut down Florida. So did Kristi Noem. She refused to shut down South Dakota. Ron DeSantis refused job or jab mandates in his state. He opposed vaccine mandates in Florida. So did Kristi Noem. And look at how they were rewarded. Ron DeSantis went at Fauci. Ron DeSantis pushed back against the CDC. Donald Trump just let them do whatever they wanted. As a matter of fact, do you guys remember this? Ron DeSantis even invented a phrase. So here's the deal, Matt. If I know nothing, why are you watching, bro? Why are you watching me? Just block me. Just unfollow me, whatever. If I don't know anything, why are you watching, man? Right? Why don't you watch somebody who knows everything? Why don't you watch yourself since you feel like you know everything? Just bounce, man. But do you guys remember this? Do you guys remember this phrase that Santos invented? Let me show you something. I remember this. He invented a phrase called COVID theater. Do you guys remember this? Look at this. This was like, when was this? This was a year or two ago.
You don't have to wear those masks. I mean, please take it off. Honestly, it's not doing anything. We got to stop with this over speed. So if you want to wear it, it's fine, but this is ridiculous.
Look at that.
All right. Well, it's good to be at USF.
You have a governor telling these students, guys, knock it off with all the COVID theater. Knock it off with the COVID theater. He was actually telling these kids, listen, stop living in fear. You don't have to wear masks. And that goes back to another difference between Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump. So let's recount. DeSantis pushed back against lockdowns. He pushed back against vaccine mandates. He also pushed back against mandated masks, as we just saw. And not only did he not say that you didn't have to wear masks, but he even made fun of these people that bully everybody else for not wearing masks. He called it COVID theater. Okay. He pushed back against Fauci. He did not allow Black Lives Matter or Antifa or all that crap that was going on in 2020. He didn't let that come into his state. He protected Florida. He did on a micro level everything that Donald Trump should have done on a macro level. And this is a good point you make, Mike. I thought Trump had no authority to stop those riots without a governor's request for National Guard support. That could be argued, but you know what Trump has that these other governors didn't have? They had the devotion. Trump had the following of the entire country, right? Trump had a lot of support when he was in office. He could have got on the mic. He could have done an address to the nation to tell everybody to stop rioting, that they have no right to do that. He could have done that. Trump never used his platform to tell people to knock it off with all the rioting. There was lots of division that Trump failed to heal. He could have used his platform. He could have sat down with the American people and spoke to them Ronald Reagan style. He could have done that, but he never did it. Instead, what does he do? He goes on Twitter and does all his crap he does on Twitter. Okay? Here's another thing that DeSantis did that I admire him for doing. He stood up to Disney with the Don't Say Gay bill. Do you guys remember that? You guys remember the Don't Say Gay thing? Ron DeSantis stood up against Disney, who tries to have a monopoly in Florida, who pretty much like rules Central Florida and Orlando. He stood up against all that, guys. He pushed back against all that. Did Donald Trump push back against all that? Against all the sexualization of our kids? I don't think so. How about election integrity? Compare Donald Trump to Ron DeSantis when it comes to election integrity. Let me read something to you guys real quick. This is straight from Ron DeSantis's state website. Look at this, guys. Ron DeSantis, 46th governor of Florida. Let me blow this up so you guys can see it. Okay. Look at this. Governor DeSantis announces the arrest of 20 elections criminals. Okay. This was just 2 months ago, guys. This was not that long ago. Listen to this. Today, Governor Ron DeSantis announced that following investigations by the Florida Office of Election Crimes and Security and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, 20 individuals are being arrested by FDLE for breaking Florida's elections laws. All 20 of these individuals were disqualified from voting after they were convicted of murder or felony sexual offense. But they chose to vote anyway, and now they have all been charged with voter fraud for a third-degree felony punishable by up to a $5,000 fine and up to 5 years in prison. Additionally, Governor DeSantis directed the Department of State to communicate to county supervisors of elections with instructions on records that they must preserve until additional reviews and investigations are complete. Think about this, guys. He got his attorney general involved for election integrity. Did Donald Trump do anything like this? Have you guys seen any significant? I'm telling you, Ron DeSantis has Trump beat on every level, and we need to get behind him, and we need to leave Trump behind. We do. We do. And speaking of leaving Trump behind, here's another thing that I still have not forgiven Donald Trump about. Here's the thing I still have not forgiven Trump about. And be honest with me, guys, this has to have crossed your mind. I want you to think back to the months leading up to the 2020 elections. What was Trump saying? Fight like hell. 3 different times he told people to come down to Washington, D.C. 3 different times. There were millions of people. And remember, we were still locked down back then. Things were still tough for people back then financially. There were 3 different times that millions of Trump supporters came to Washington, D.C. at his request to stand with their president, right? Do you guys remember that? The 3rd time they came was January 6th. That was the 3rd time they came, was January 6th. Do you guys know that to this day, there are still people rotting in a prison in Washington, D.C. that came there to support Donald Trump? He didn't pardon them on his way out. You know what he did? He told everybody to come to D.C., and then when the crap hit the fan, what does he do? He gets on Twitter and he tells everybody to go home. He didn't thank them for coming to support him. He just said, go home. The people that were arrested are still there. Do you know how many people that have committed suicide that were at the Capitol? There were people that have committed suicide that are still rotting in those jails from January 6th. Trump doesn't even mention those people. He still had months to go. Well, weeks at that point. He could have pardoned them on his way out, but instead, who does he pardon on his way out? Kwame Kilpatrick, the corrupt mayor of Detroit. Why don't you pardon your supporters that came down for January 6th to let them be back with their families? There were people that weren't even inside the Capitol that were arrested. Their cell phones were triangulated. They happened to be within the facility. That is unjust, man. You don't just forget about people that are rotting in prison, that are there for you. They showed up for you, and they're in jail for you, and you don't even mention them by name. 2 years later, he still hasn't mentioned any of them. To me, that's just cold right there, man. They took the fall for him, and he didn't pardon them. He had the authority to pardon them, but he wants to run again in 2024, right? So he probably doesn't want the optics of pardoning, quote unquote, Capitol rioters or insurrectionists. So he let them rot in jail. I have never forgotten about that. I haven't forgotten about that, guys. I think Trump is toxic. I think his time has passed. And I think DeSantis is a much better candidate. I really do. People say, oh, the red wave. We didn't have a red wave, but I'll tell you what, man. Florida had a red freaking tsunami. Florida had a 1,000-foot red tsunami. And if you want the blueprint, if you want the template for how to successfully win an election in this climate, look no further than Ron DeSantis in Florida. Ron's our new guy, man. Exactly, Denise. He could have got him out. He had the power to get him out. Who does he let out of jail instead? Kwame Kilpatrick. Now I'm curious, Denise, how do you feel he destroyed Pennsylvania? I'm not disagreeing. I'm curious how you think he destroyed Pennsylvania. But I just feel like he is, I don't know. I thank him for what he did in office. I really do. But I think Ron DeSantis can succeed, can far surpass that. I think 2 terms of DeSantis would really put this country in a good direction. And I think he should choose Kristi Noem as his running mate. I really do. Could you imagine a Kristi Noem, a Ron DeSantis ticket with Kristi Noem as his running mate? 2 governors who refused to shut their states down during COVID and were both rewarded handsomely for not doing so. That's who we need to get behind, guys. And you're right about that, Len. You're right about that. Trump did not tell people to break into the Capitol. I agree. I defended him when that happened. But that proves my point even more, Len. What you just said, you just very eloquently and articulately argued my case. Because Trump didn't tell those people to break into the Capitol, which means that they're falsely imprisoned. They shouldn't be there. He should have let them out. He should have pardoned them on his way out. But he knows that if he would have pardoned them on their way out, that he would have given the left 4 years of sound bites. He would have given them 4 years of optics to use against him for his 2024 campaign. So rather than do that, he just let him rot in jail. To me, that's pretty narcissistic, man. That's pretty cold. That's really, really cold for him to let them take the fall for him like that. I just think it's cold. I really do. Trump is not our guy for 2024. I agree with that. He is too polarizing, but I think he was also stuck between a rock and a hard place. He couldn't do anything right. Maybe he could have made better choices or listened to different people. There will always be then, what, and ifs, shoulda, coulda, wouldas. We need to move forward. I agree. But the fact is, Trump abandoned his supporters. I mean, think about this, guys. Not even the left abandons their supporters the way Trump abandoned his people on January 6th. Think back to 2020. Think all these rioters that were destroying all these black cities, destroying all these communities. Did the left abandon their minions from hell? No, they bailed them out of jail. Kamala Harris and all these, dude, they pardoned them. They started GoFundMes. They got them out of jail. They treated their supporters better than Trump treated his. Think about it. Think of all the useful idiots of the left in 2020 that took advantage of the death of George Floyd. Think of all those useful idiots that rioted, that did all this, that did all that. They bailed them out of jail, guys. Can you think of any 2020 rioters that are still in jail right now for all the carnage they wreaked? They did way more than break out a few windows in the Capitol or whatever we saw at the Capitol, right? Are any of them in jail right now? Did any of them stay in jail longer than a couple of nights? No, they were bailed out immediately. Trump has his people go to D.C. for him. I believe they were falsely imprisoned. And guess what? To this day, they're still rotting there. Several of them have deleted themselves. Lives are destroyed. I don't know, man. We can do better. So in closing, because I don't want to stay on here too long, on a practical level, what do we do to stay sane? You know where I stand on Trump. I'm no longer a Trump supporter. I'm not. I'm a DeSantis guy now. But the fact is, even that I have to be careful with, because it says in Scripture, put not your trust in princes. It says in Jeremiah, cursed is he who trusts in human flesh, right? We're always going to be disappointed if we trust in politicians. They're always going to let us down. There are some politicians that are better than others. But the fact is, in my opinion, guys, I think you should make the decision that I made 2 years ago, is just live in the real world, guys. Focus on things you can control, right? There's not much we can do about all these elections. All we can do is vote. And many argue that doesn't even matter anymore. So what I would just recommend, guys, is focus on things you can control. I've been focused on building my real estate business. That's all I've been focused on, guys. That's why you haven't been hearing much from me. Think of how much I've sat out in the last 2 years. Think of everything that's been going on in this country since Biden and the Dems took over. And I've been pretty silent on it. Critical race theory, just all this stuff that's been going on. Guys, I would have gone insane had I kept podcasting during all that, because I would have to take in all that information, all that negativity, all that evil, decipher it, and then, spin it for you guys. To me, it just wasn't worth the cost of my mental health. And that's why you guys haven't heard from me during all that. Moving forward, I probably am going to get back podcasting and streaming. But it's going to kind of go in a different direction. I might cover more cultural stuff. I might do like some spiritual stuff, some business stuff. I'll still cover political stuff, but not to the degree that I used to, because it's not mentally healthy, guys. It's really not. It's not healthy for me to to just dwell over all of that stuff. And it's not healthy for you guys to just, hear about it all the time, because we can't do much about it. We really can't. The only thing you guys can do is live your lives, man. Yes, I know inflation's going up. I know things are more expensive, but you got to just do whatever you can to make as much money as you can. You might have to make sacrifices and homeschool your kids, especially if you live in Michigan now. With Proposal 3 passing, shoot, man. You are handing your kids over to the wolves. If you expect public schools to do right by your kids after Proposal 3 just passing, you might have to make some sacrifices as a parent and do some homeschooling to protect your kids from these public schools. If you send your kids to Caesar, he's going to raise them up like Romans, right? So that's what I would recommend, guys. Just, I don't know. Just focus on those things you can control, guys. And it was good to be with you guys today. I appreciate that, Sammy. God bless you, man. And yeah, I might start streaming again, but it may not be a bunch of political stuff. It just may not. Anyway, guys, please like, comment, and share this video. It was good to see you all. And I love you guys. I'll see you on the next podcast, whenever that happens. Take care.